It's on the Discovery Channel. Yeah, it's like a great show, right? And I think it's still on, is it not? Yeah. It gives us kind of a peek into how everyday things are made, some things you may not think about. Well, who doesn't like bacon besides Linnea, right? Everybody likes bacon, and I know. And I found it fascinating in that show how it's made. Pork bellies are placed onto a tumbler to soften the hide. Then the softened bellies are placed on a conveyor belt where the hide is sliced away from the meat. The hide drops onto another conveyor belt where it goes to be processed into pork rinds, which, by the way, I love pork rinds. My grandpa used to buy ham, and he'd slice off the fat, right? And then he'd cut that into little pieces, and he'd deep fry it, which, in essence, what you're eating, right, is like deep fried fat. But boy, is it good. But he called them cracklings, right? I know I'm on camera, so I'm a little reluctant to say this, but my family called me Robbie. I know, Tony's now, that's going to be forever. That's going to be my new name, Robbie. But my grandma would say, because I would eat those things by the handful, my grandma would say, Robbie, you're going to get sick someday. And I was like, oh, Grandma. And then sure enough, one day I ate too many of those cracklings, and boy. But I love pork rinds. So that's where, so it's kind of like use everything, right? So they go to make the pork rinds, then a brine solution, a salt solution of liquid smoke and other flavorings is mixed and injected into each pork belly. The bellies are then hung on a rack and passed through another smoke bay where they are showered with more liquid smoke and more flavorings. Then they're placed in this really low heat oven for like 5 hours then they're blast chilled and placed in a cooler before they get sliced up. And they're individually placed into chutes where they're sliced and sized. And then they pass through this long microwave, where the fat's cooked off, and that fat is then used to make, of all things, pet food, partly. And then the bacon strips are rolled out onto a big wax paper and packaged so that we can all do the proverbial what? Bring home the bacon, right? So I know what you're thinking, man, this is like a major rabbit hole. Old Pastor Roy's losing it. Why is he talking about pork bellies on Mother's Day? The point is this: even the most common of things are intricately and wonderfully made. A great deal of effort goes into the making of some of the most mundane things: toothpicks, pencils, chewing gum, frisbees, you name it. Human beings, we are the most intricate of processes and marvels of design. In Psalm it says this: "For you created my inmost being. You knit me together in my mother's womb. I praise you because I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Your works are too wonderful. I know that full well. My frame was not hidden from you when I was made in the secret place." Psalm 139. We are indeed all intricately and wonderfully made. Some of you may remember the book, The Joy Luck Club by Amy Tan. And in there she describes her pro-choice friend's reflections on abortion. She'd almost aborted her daughter. When she found out she was pregnant, she was furious. And she thought of her, whenever she thought of her pregnancy, there was this growing resentment inside of her. She drugged the father along with her when she went to the clinic to have the abortion, but she was surprised that they made her watch a film. She was shocked when she saw those little 7-week-old fetuses with their tiny, tiny, tiny little 7-week-old translucent fingers. And those fingers were moving. And then later, when her daughter was born, she spoke of how remarkably perfect her little girl was. But she was especially intrigued and fascinated by the way she flexed and curled her fingers around her mother's fingers. And she was reminded of that movie. God has done a marvelous thing in the making of each and every one of us. We're magical creatures, right down to the way we curl our fingers. We've encountered people, though. Undoubtedly, we've all encountered people that we thought of as mundane and less than interesting and unremarkable. But the Christian author C.S. Lewis cautions us in our dealing with one another. He said that in all friendships, in all human interactions, in all loves, all play and politics, and any of life. They're no ordinary people. He said, you have never talked to a mere mortal. We are indeed all intimately, intricately, and wonderfully made. In Genesis 1, it says, let us make man in our image. By the way, that's the kind of the first thing that people point to for proof of the Trinity. When it says, let us make man in our image, in our likeness, and let them rule over the fish of the sea and the birds of the air, over the livestock and all of the earth, over all the creatures that move on the ground. So God created man in his image. God blessed them and said to them, be fruitful and multiply in number, fill the earth and subdue it. The essential truth is this: if we were exposed to only men or only women, we'd have a skewed image of God. God has expressed himself through the images of both masculinity and femininity. Remember, I talked about the painting by Rembrandt. There's a great book called The Return of the Prodigal Son by Henry Nouwen. And on the cover is the Rembrandt painting of the prodigal son. And in that painting, the father, you know the story, the son asked for his inheritance early, which basically meant, I want you to be dead, give me my money. And he went and spent it on wild women and wine, and then he came groveling back, and the father welcomed him back. And there's a great painting in the Rembrandt painting of the father standing like this over the son. And I forget which hand is which right now, but one hand Rembrandt painted to be masculine, and the other one he painted to be more feminine, to show God in that way. God as the father, but yet God as the mother, the tender, nurturing side of God. Someone aptly said this: God couldn't be everywhere, so he made mothers. In Proverbs 31, there's a great, 10 through 31, there's a great poem. It's written in the form of an acrostic poem, in which each of the 22 verses begins with a different letter of the Hebrew alphabet. If it were an English alphabet, it would go something like this. A is for attentive, B is for busy, C is for caring, D is for diligent, and so on. And in creating this epilogue to the book of Proverbs called The Wife of Noble Character, the poet is intending to say everything there is to say about the virtues of a praiseworthy woman. And I don't know of any comparative list in the Bible for fathers like that, like we have for mothers in Proverbs 31. It says, she is a woman of character. She is a devout, devoted homemaker. She's generous towards the needy. She's a teacher. She's effective as a mother. She's God-fearing and praiseworthy. If we were to break this outline down and detail each verse, we would see that such a woman indeed has character, is industrious, is managerial, perhaps even entrepreneurial, influential, and diligent. Such a woman is a model of generosity. She cares for the needy. She raises her children well. And her husband, get this, is respected in the community because of her. She loves God and has earned the respect of her husband, children, and her community, and in every way a remarkable woman. But perhaps rather than holding up this list as a litmus test, if you will, of the worthiness of the women in our lives, we might rather let it serve as a reminder that rarely does a mother receive the recognition that she deserves. Rarely, and today we celebrate not just mothers, but we celebrate womanhood and all that comes with that, the nurturing effect of women. There was an elementary school teacher once that asked her students to list what they thought to be the 7 wonders of the world. And they all put in their answers and they tallied them up. And it was pretty predictable. These were older kids, 6th graders. The Great Pyramids, the Taj Mahal, the Grand Canyon, Panama Canal, St. Peter's Basilica, the Empire State Building, and the Great Wall of China. She noticed one little girl, though, had not turned in her list. So she said, honey, can I help you make your list? She said, there's so many things I couldn't make up my mind which to pick. The teacher prompted her again and asked her what she had so far. What do you have so far? And the little girl hesitated, and she said this: I think the 7 wonders of the world are to see, to hear, to touch, to taste, to feel, to laugh, and to love like my mother. In that spirit, I think we can all agree that among the many wonders of the world is motherhood and womanhood. So how does God want us to treat these wonders in our lives, these wonders of the world? Two points in Scripture I'd like to point to. Each of you must respect his mother and father, and you must observe the Sabbath, for I am the Lord your God. That comes from Leviticus. And from Proverbs, from this same acrostic poem, her children arise and call her blessed. Her husband also praises her. There was a middle-aged man who goofed up. He messed up. He ended up buying two cards, not just one, but 2 cards for his mother. He gave her one that year, right? He gave her the one that he thought was better, and he put the other one away. He said, I'll give it to her next year. Sadly, his mom passed away shortly after he gave her the first card, which made the second card essentially undeliverable. And the card that sat there in his file mirrors much of our lives, does it not? That card is like so many of our good intentions that never get delivered. So it is that we need to be grateful each day for God's good gifts in the moment, because we may never have the opportunity to express that love that we have. So my thing is, go ahead and give both cards. And I don't mean that literally. Maybe I do. Maybe some of you bought 2 cards. But give both cards. Give both thoughts. Give all the love. Don't hold back for tomorrow, because tomorrow may not happen. My own mom passed away about 18 years ago or so. And I had a great relationship with her. I wish she could have seen me become a pastor. But I did have a great relationship with her. But towards the end of her life, when she died unexpectedly, all of a sudden she just turned jaundice one day. And I was like, man, Mom, you look really yellow. And 2 weeks later, she passed away from liver failure. But my mom was absolutely not perfect. But she did a great job of raising 3 boys, pretty much. My dad was there, but she did a lot of it on her own. But I have regrets too. Towards the end of my mom's life, we had this kind of symbiotic relationship where she needed transportation because she didn't drive. And to be honest, those of you that know me, you know my story. She needed a ride and I needed pills. And we, that's how we worked it. And I honestly thought, it makes me want to cry sometimes, so I think that my mom thought that, or she had the thought that I'd stop giving her rides if she stopped providing me with medication. And that's a sad thing to think of. So, my point is this, is that, like I said, is we need to give both those cards to Mom. We need to express that love and not wait for tomorrow. And there was a man too, the story, a man stopped by a flower shop and he wanted to buy some flowers to be delivered to his mother on Mother's Day. And as he got out of the car, he noticed a young girl sitting on the curb crying. And he went up to her and he said, "What's wrong?" And she said, "I want to buy a rose for my mom, but it costs $2. And the man smiled and said, "Come with me, honey. Come with me. I'll buy you a rose for your mom." So he went in, he ordered the flowers for his mother to be delivered, and he bought the girl a rose. And as they left the shop, he said, "Where do you live? Can I give you a ride home? Can I take you home to your mother?" She said, "Yes, please take me to my mother." She directed him to the cemetery where he watched this little girl place this rose on his mother's freshly dug grave. You know what the man did? He returned to that flower shop, canceled the delivery of the flowers, and drove the 200 miles to his mother's house and delivered those flowers in person. We need to do what we still can do while we have time. Honoring mother and fathers is about respect and remembering to express our love and our gratitude for the impact they've had in our lives. Certainly not perfect. We know that. Nobody's perfect except Jesus. The women in our lives today, we need to celebrate them for who they are, for what they do for us, particularly as men, to smooth that rough edges of us, right? And when I think of that, I think of, have you ever seen glass on a beach? Like colored glass? Isn't it cool? At one point it was probably really sharp, but the waves have smoothed it. And that's us, guys, right? The women in our lives have softened our edges, and we need to celebrate that. No mother, no woman, no wife is perfect. But without them, I don't know about you, but I could say I'd be lost. Can I get an amen? Amen. Amen. At times, moms and women and wives no doubt think that they're not perfect. They're far from perfect. But we know that they're intricately and wonderfully made and uniquely made. And knowing how moms are made, we appreciate them that much more. And it's because of their comfort, their nurturing, their presence, their labor, and their love in our lives that we truly have been given a glimpse of a loving God. Through our mothers, our wives, the women in our lives, we've been given a glimpse of a good Father. My prayer is that we will honor these wonderful women today in our hearts, in our minds, if they're here, if they're not here, that today we'll give the 2 cards and we'll love those people each and every day. Amen.